I'd like to start with an issue that's timely right now, the global refugee crisis. What do you think about the fact that anti-refugee sentiment in the U.S. has been so high recently, especially since the Paris attacks and the San Bernardino shooting?
Well, I think our country has a couple traditions. It has one tradition that we're all, I think, very aware of, which is that we are a country of immigrants, often of refugees. Very few of us were here at the very beginning. And we are proud of being the most generous country as it relates to taking in refugees, far more generous than any other country historically. On the other hand, every time a new batch of refugees appears or emerges and we have to have this domestic debate, we also have a long tradition of maybe being a little bit trepidatious. And we have a reasonably long tradition, unfortunately, also of people in the political world, kind of stoking fears in a way that's not all that helpful. And it doesn't project well internationally. And I feel that here at the UN, just everybody asking me about comments made by this politician or that politician, and me saying that does not represent the majority view for Americans. So I think right now, and President Obama has done this, we have an obligation to meet people where they are. If they're afraid, to walk them through how we think we can advance both the objective of keeping the American people safe, which is, of course, the President's #1 objective, but also stay true to our values and lend a helping hand to families, just like our families, who have no place else really to turn.
Absolutely. And I know you yourself were an immigrant to this country from Ireland. Has that kind of shaped your views or feelings around this issue at all?
I don't know where my instincts really come from. I think one never does. You could make up a story. It's exactly because of this moment that this happened. But I certainly have a there but for the grace of God go I feeling when I see particularly mothers who have their kids, and I just imagine what would it be like to have to choose between staying in your home where because you're afraid you have no place else to go, but knowing that a barrel bomber could come or somebody could gas you with chemical weapons, gas your kids, where food is being used as a weapon of war. So that's, choice #1. Choice #2 is you entrust your fate to some creep of a smuggler who tells you you're going to be safe on a boat and that it's just over there. And then, these boats capsize routinely. The life preservers are not real life preservers. They're just, again, a means of extortion. Those are the choices that these families are facing. They're not coming, and appealing to come to the United States or any other country because, they want to sort of trade up a good life for a great life. They are coming to this country because they are desperate. And they believe, because of our traditions and because of the values of the vast majority of the American people, that we are a country that could understand that, and that we do have the moral imagination to put ourselves in their shoes and think, gosh, what would we want? I thought Pope Francis, when he was here, I heard him speak before Congress and before the UN, but before Congress he said, look at their faces. Just before you think about refugees as a population or the 60 million people who are displaced around the world, think about each individual one by one and imagine the kind of calculus that they're making every day just to survive and to attain even just basic dignity.
Right, absolutely. And now I'd love to talk about your experience as one of the few female ambassadors to the UN. I believe you're one of 40 women ambassadors to the UN. So what is that like, being in that minority?
Well, first of all, your generation has to change that.
I agree.
You do, and you can. I think there's no question, not just here in the States, where so many young women are getting involved in foreign affairs or humanitarian work or human rights work, but also globally. We're seeing change. When Madeleine Albright, who would later become the first ever woman Secretary of State, when she was in my job before that in 1993, there were 7 women ambassadors out of 183, and now we're up close to 40. So we're making improvements, but there are 193 countries. So what is 40 next to 193? It's not sufficient. I think the sisterhood that we have here, as is often the case, stems in part because there are so few women ambassadors, but we engage with one another. Madeleine Albright again says that there's a special place reserved in hell for women who don't help other women.
Right, it's a great quote.
It's a great quote. And that should be true for me as an ambassador who runs this amazing mission of U.S. public servants. It should be true of me from a very powerful country looking out for a woman ambassador from a smaller country. I mean, being a woman and to be the American ambassador is far less challenging in terms of any disrespect or underestimation of what I offer, because I'm America as well as a woman. But if you're an ambassador from some countries where women are discriminated against at home, where there's an expectation that they're going to be second-class citizens, and that individual has actually made it to the top and made it to the small slights and the disregard that those women are experiencing here are very real. And so we have a kind of, I don't want to say a club, but we come together as a group of women ambassadors. In fact, just a couple weeks ago, I took all the women ambassadors at the UN to an amazing play with Lupita, you know, from 12 Years a Slave. The play was about sexual violence in Liberia. And all the women ambassadors sat in the public theater and we watched this play, and you know, you're just thinking, we have so much in common, and we should be able together to mobilize collective action for peacekeeping missions to care more about this set of issues, you know, for more resources to be dedicated to post-traumatic stress therapy and so forth. And so it was a very emboldening experience. We just need to do more of that in a network.
And then I know you recently met with Caitlyn Jenner to talk about transgender rights in this country.
Yes. What
do you hope to work on in your role here to help improve transgender people rights in this country?
Well, thank you for asking that. I think just the fact that you're even asking it is a reflection of how the debate is evolving and how Caitlyn has helped put an issue on the map that was invisible for so many people. An issue where if you are transgender, the risk of being bullied or being attacked, raped, or murdered is exponentially higher than for any of the rest of us. So she says she's getting educated because she's new to this world herself. She's educated me already. I have not known her long. We've really been champions of LGBT issues here, and we've had some very significant success, like getting the UN now to grant benefits to same-sex couples, the same that they would give to heterosexual couples, which doesn't sound like a big deal now after the progress we've made in the United States, but a lot of the countries within the UN still have very homophobic legislation on their books. We now have the UN Human Rights Division reporting on the conditions for LGBT and transgender people in all the countries around the world, so we have a way of marking whether we're making progress or we're regressing. But I don't think transgender rights have gotten anywhere near the visibility of lesbian, gay, and bisexual rights. And so Caitlyn and I are in touch to figure out what can we do to change that? What can we do to humanize this set of issues so it isn't an abstraction? And we begin to chip away at these prejudices that are, old habits die hard, and the progress is slower here at the UN, much slower than it is domestically in the United States, where, of course, we still have a long way to go. But I think, having a public figure like her, or the women and men that she's gotten to know, traveling around this country on a bus, and I think that group of individuals, we could do some damage together here at the UN. It would be great.
Right, sounds like it.
Yeah.
And then I know just yesterday was International Human Rights Day. Obviously, there are certain human rights issues that get a lot of attention in the media, but are there any human rights issues that you think are maybe underrepresented in the media that college women should know about and maybe can make an impact on in some way?
Well, I think one message I have for young people, for what it's worth, is there is a tendency, I find, in your generation to want to solve all problems at once. I want to change the world. I want to protect human rights. I want to promote human rights. And the basic thing I would say is, well, I'd say two things. One, focus is good. Just if you or any individual gets to know one issue well, it doesn't mean you'll work on that issue for the rest of your career or the rest of your life, but by going deep, you get to learn things that you can then apply to the next issue. I mean, I'm speaking biased very much by my own experience. I went to work after I graduated from college in the former Yugoslavia. I tried to learn the language Serbo-Croatian. My mother said to me, "What the hell are you doing learning Serbo-Croatian? Like, when are you ever use this language again?" And she was right. Although actually now at the UN I can speak to my Serbian, Croatian, and Bosnian colleagues in the language. But it was that little microcosm. I saw UN peacekeepers, I saw terrible sexual violence, I saw transitional justice, I saw food deprivation, So a lot of the issues that then now I deal with in my day job, I got a first taste of them in one small setting. And so I think the more that people who really aspire to go into public service, whether it's as a lawyer or a doctor or a diplomat or whatever it is, journalist, it's all a form of public service from where I sit, that getting some experience in a deep way on a particular issue is really, really helpful. And then the second thing I'd say is once you've decided what you're committed to and what you're passionate about, humanizing an issue so you're not talking about human rights as such, but you're talking about a specific individual. This gets back to Pope Francis and the see their faces. Just to give you one example here, we talk a lot at the UN about women's rights. It's something that's deeply important to President Obama and his whole team. There's a lot of rhetoric, there's a lot of reporting at the United Nations, but sometimes you don't even think of who the women are you're even really talking about. And so what we did this year when all the heads of state gathered in September, as they do every year, we actually launched a campaign called the Free the 20 Women Political Prisoners campaign. The Chinese were hosting a mission saying how great things had become since Beijing, 20 years before the Beijing Women's Conference, where Hillary Clinton had famously said human rights are women's rights are human rights, and sort of bust open this issue in a new way. And this was the commemorative conference. So we hung the portraits of these 20 women who were being imprisoned and whose voices were not at this conference, were not at any conference because they were in jail, weren't even able to take care of their kids in many cases. Instead of diplomats and heads of state walking by and going into the UN and saying how much they care about women, they actually had to confront the faces of these women. And we've now actually managed to get 6 of the 20 women out of jail, which is amazing.
Congratulations, yeah, that's incredible.
Seriously, my team did such an amazing job publicizing their fates. And if that's all we do in life, that's not terrible, right? If these 6 women are, and they have so much to offer if they get back in circulation and they trust again that their voices won't be barred or silenced, but will be embraced. But I think that's an example where had we just made a push on women's rights in the abstract, we would have gotten less attention and we would have had less impact. And so that humanization, that finding of the individual who can help you tell your story and promote your cause, I think is very important.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for sharing these really important insights. This has been really so enlightening to chat with you, and I really appreciate you taking the time and speaking to college women about these really important issues for our country.
I love college women. I'm counting on college women.
Absolutely. Well, we love college women too. So
Awesome.
Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. This was a pleasure.
My pleasure. Thank you for coming.